figure for the Star Wars Black Series. This is the version of the Mandalorian that's shown at the start of the series for the Mandalorian show. I could be wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this is the very first Mandalorian of the Star Wars Black Series too. Not necessarily counting Boba Fett's or any other prior version of a Mandalorian. I'm talking about specifically the Mandalorian character. There again on the box, it's designated just as the Mandalorian. Future releases will have something designated that specific instance of the character from the show. So like there's the Glavis Ring World one and some other ones and that kind of thing. But this character actually has been around for a while. The copyright on here is 2019, so I'm just about certain that that means this character was released in 2019. At any rate, as far as that TV show goes, the interesting thing about the Mandalorian show is there's been a lot of Easter eggs and fan service, but it didn't really feel like it was blatant pandering, so it was really kind of the quite balance, or has been. I don't know if that series is going to continue after the movie that's supposed to come out sometime next year, if I remember right. And ultimately, I do think it fit in really well with the Star Wars series as a whole. What I would also say about that particular show is my first impression was, why are they doing a show about some other random Mandalorian? It just seemed odd to me. You have this other guy, he's got brown armor on, and you're looking at the promo shots and whatever and going, what is going on with this? Why don't they just use Boba Fett? Because he is the most well-known Mandalorian by far. My initial reaction was this show could kind of suck, or at least not be as interesting if they had used Boba Fett. But one way or the other, we're going to do the unboxing here and get into this character review. So I got my trusty Red Rebel, and we're going to pop this thing open. Hasbro has been keeping their Black Series boxes pretty darn simple. It's just a couple of pieces of tape at the top of the box here. And it is, we'll do a quick look at this box. It's a nice looking package overall. I love the typography and just kind of the color scheme. Got the dark gray Mandalo. Doesn't even say Mandalorian across the side here. Well, except in the smaller red type, of course. Yeah, number 94. Not exactly sure how the numbering system goes. My best guess is this is 94 out of the entire Star Wars Black Series. I'm going to have to do some research on that because I'm still kind of new to this series and I don't know for sure how they do that, the numbering system or whatever. Yeah, pretty nice package design all the way around. It does have a little bit of a finish, whatever, but then you have a little bit of a glossy finish. A lot of the other figures that I have, the Hasbro here has a glossy spot coat on it, and also the Star Wars logo up here. This one doesn't appear to have that on the Hasbro logo, but it does just on the Star Wars logo, and it's not a very thick coat, so it's kind of hard to pick up on camera, but I can definitely feel the difference in texture there. So that's interesting. Just to show you as an example, you can very clearly see the glossy coat on here. This paper stock is more of a matte finisher, and you could see the gloss coat on the Star Wars logo. So some interesting subtle details. Don't know why they did it that way, but that's just what they did. Anyways, yeah, we'll pop this open here. Got his signature pistol. We'll take a look at that later. His long-range rifle. Again, we'll take a look at that later. And the figure itself. Another thing I really dig about the Mandalorian series is, at least starting off, it was very much stylized in the form of like a spaghetti western or whatever. All right, so let's take a look at some details on this little dude. So there again, when we're introduced to this character at the start of that series, he has a lot of mismatched armor that looks like it was pretty much scavenged off of other conflicts, I guess. You know, some pieces of armor that were taken off of other troopers. And what's interesting about that to me is it does really heavily imply some history with this character. So he's been around kind of working his way through the galaxy and, you know, taking what he needs to keep moving on and to protect himself, frankly. And in a way, it also kind of suggests the history of Mandalore, because at least the way I interpreted the start of the series is the Mandalorians are pretty much scattered throughout the galaxy or whatever. It's not really, you know, they don't really have their home planet or anything like that. And so he doesn't have like a home, basically, to go and get armor from and just like the traditional Mandalorian garb. As far as the Mandalores go, have pretty much been forced to make do with what they can to continue with their culture. So, and that is very much represented with this dude right here, of course. What you get with this suit of armor is a lot of impact marks here, little silver dents and that kind of thing. And the implication to me is this is all done by blunt force objects or projectile firing weapons, like an actual regular gun or something like that instead of a blaster. So, he's pretty banged up, obviously. Got different tone armor plates here. Another layer to this character is he's obviously been making some money as a bounty hunter because he had enough money to go and fetch a piece of pure beskar and get this helmet fashioned. So he starts off with the series at least with his pure beskar helmet. And as far as that goes, one thing I'll touch on real quick is the paint application. I don't recall in the TV series that when he's first shown that he has a pretty beat up helmet or it's scuffed up or whatever. I mean, it might be a little bit grungy, but at least in this case, if you look at it real close, it's either dirty or it looks like it was painted and so worn away that it's almost down to its silver base coat or whatever so I'm really not sure how to interpret that, I guess, as far as the paint application on this helmet. Looks pretty cool though, I'll say that much. As far as what I said about scavenged armor, I'm not 100% sure, but this looks like it came off of a shore trooper, like from Rogue One and Andor. You got some other little bits here like the knee pad. If you look at the shin, that is definitely taken off of some form of stormtrooper. And in fact, in my upcoming review, that is exactly what we're going to be taking a look at. I mean, it is basically that piece with a little extra sculpting to show that he's got some ammunition or whatever on a belt. So one way or the other, he's definitely taken armor where he can get it. And I could go on my little rant there about fingerless gloves, but that's not quite what we have going on here. As far as the show goes, you got to look really close at the character in the show. From what I can tell, it looks like he's really got leather gloves and then sort of like a second layer on top of that. It's kind of hard to see here. It's not totally apparent. It really is just like painted on with a little bit of sculpting to imply it, I think. So taking that a step further, basically, if you're really looking at this character and just kind of Mandalorians in general, their armor isn't like all, just big pieces of armor. It's actually layers of different armor. I mean, I don't think it's ever been really stated, but I take it to mean that, well, you've got this heavy duty chest plate here or whatever that's supposed to be resistant to at least blaster bolts and might be lightsaber resistant, that kind of thing. But then you have this wraparound torso piece, and I kind of take that to be sort of like a piece of Kevlar armor or something like that, like a woven mesh or something. And then you've got this underpiece here, so I would guesstimate that a typical Mandalorian, and at least in this case, has basically 4 layers. So you got what's showing here, and then he's probably got to have an undershirt or something like that on, I would assume. And the same kind of goes all the way around. It doesn't just have a shoulder pauldron, of course. He has some heavy duty, what's basically cloth, but I got to assume there's some other type of protection woven into that or whatever. So what you wind up here, basically, at least my interpretation of what a Mandalorian is sort of like a sci-fi version of a knight, with the layered armor and that kind of thing. But anyway, moving on with details, you can see straight away, that's one thing I'll point out is this is the first stage in his journey as the Mandalorian of the TV show. He doesn't have his wrist rocket whistler launcher thing, so we're going to see that in future releases, of course. It's got a wrist protection plate there. I already showed you the gloves. Some nice cloth detail. In there again, some armor wear, impact hits and that kind of thing all the way around the figure. A little bit of plating on the backside here. I got the little shirt coming in here tucked under the belt. Coming around the front here, we've got thigh guards and everything. It's everything that you would expect to see with this figure. Kind of mismatched boots, maybe? There again, he's taking whatever he can get to keep moving and doing his job as the Mandalorian or whatever. One way or the other, we find that for sure this dude is a fighter and a scrapper, so but anyways, you got kind of the bandolier going across here and his utility belt. Got all kinds of little ammo packs, and I want to say these are probably thermal detonators or something like that. You got a holster for his pistol. More Mandalorian wrist gauntlet type deco. Not sure what this is supposed to be functionally. I don't think it's shown, at least this part in the series. There again, that piece that looks like Scarif Trooper armor, and actually, you know what? I'm going to take a look at that real quick here. I think I was right on. That sure seems to match up, although this is from maybe a different rank or something like that. But I mean, it's an identical piece one way or the other. So pretty cool helmet, of course. Interesting styling. You've got that interesting iconic groove pattern here on the back of the head, and that is specific to this character. I don't think any other Mandalorian has a helmet quite like this one. There again, plastic cape, just kind of hangs down there. It's got really nice styling and texture. Nothing to it at all. It's not painted or anything like that. It's just a single sculpted piece, and it is a little bit pliable, but the way it's built and designed, it's only intended to hang down there. So yeah, so you got a little bit of a jawline underneath the helmet there, but not a whole lot to go on. I mean, I think the helmet could come off if you wanted to, but I'm not going to try to do that today. Probably have to research that a little bit to see if that's something that you could safely pull off, if nothing else for the limited amount of posability that you can get out of this thing. And that's something else I got to point out. There's no jetpack on this particular figure. He does have a notch here, and I'm just about 100% certain that's for the rifle. We'll take a look at that in just a little bit here. As far as articulation, I mean, he's got what you need. I'll tell you one thing straight up, this elbow seems to be a little bit gummy. I mean, it bends fine, but most of the other Star Wars Black Series figures that I have are sort of notchy. You know, they're a little bit harder, a little bit stiffer to move or whatever, but it's not bad. It's just a different feel for how the joint moves is all. Wrists, you got the newer style wrist where one can rotate up and down. It's on a hinge here, and the other one can rotate side to side. So that's the other hinge. That's basically intended for two-handed weapon holding. You got some knee joint movement there, and has quite a range of motion actually. Older style pin joint here where that's exposed on the outside. Pretty good range of motion, I'd say, with the feet. You know, the feet can rotate out. Just they're pretty much everything you'd expect from a Star Wars Black Series figure. And this one is definitely of the action figure variety, so he needs all that flexibility for sure. Anyways, yeah, you got waist rotation. I'm not going to bend that too much because that is rubbing up against this bandolier, and I mean the mobility is there, but I don't want to stress that piece. Can rotate up and down. I will say the nice thing about this is they designed it in a way so at least you have the flexibility to rotate them up and down and a little bit sideways or whatever. It doesn't really interfere with it, so that's, I think, pretty nicely done. And of course the head has a whole range of motion there. Nothing missing, nothing terribly surprising here as far as I'm concerned. And you know, he honestly seems to be pretty effortless as far as how you could pose him, up to the point where you can get his pistol in his hand. Trigger finger fits right inside the trigger there, so that's pretty nice. So yeah, he's got his gun drawn, he's popping around a corner or whatever, and he's about ready to open fire. So yeah, moving on with some accessory details here. So this is the Mandalorian signature gun here. I have no idea what type of pistol this is supposed to be, but it has a nice pistol grip here, painted on. I believe the pistol itself is also painted silver. Definitely two paint jobs on here, so you got a baseline of plastic and then silver paint and kind of a black pistol grip here. That'll slide right into his holster there. As far as the most notable accessory here, that would be Mandalorian's long-range rifle. Now this particular piece, if you're real familiar with Star Wars, you already know, but for those who don't, I'll explain that the design of this piece is taken almost directly off of Boba Fett, the original Mandalorian's first appearance in any Star Wars piece, the Star Wars Holiday Special, and he had a gun like this with a kind of a fork design on the end of it or whatever. That was actually one of the first promo shots they used when they were advertising that this series was coming out. They basically showed this rifle, and people who are Star Wars geeks like myself definitely immediately got that, so understood where that's coming from. So pretty beautifully detailed. Got a nice, I don't know what if you would call that a shoulder stock or whatever. Silver paint application on kind of like the midsection of the barrel. Of course, also on the fork end of the barrel. One thing I kind of wish they would have done is make this scope removable. There are a number of instances on the show where Mando takes this off of the gun and just uses it at a kind of a long distance viewing monocle or whatever. As far as how you can pose with it, let's take a look at that. Yeah, it's intended to be mounted on that left shoulder piece, but I don't think it's supposed to go all the way in, so I'm not going to force that. I would have thought they would have had a deep enough notch or whatever so that it could go all the way in there. So, oh yeah, and one other thing I failed to mention before as far as articulation is he does have some pretty prominent, easy to manipulate butterfly joints there, so he can move his shoulders forward and backwards. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I want to try to get this mounted on here. Yeah, that's only going to fit in there maybe a couple of millimeters. So I'm going to have to look into that more, but it's definitely intended to fit on there, but it doesn't fit super tight. Kind of forces the cape to fall off in kind of a weird position. So at least at first glance, that seems to be a little bit disappointing. Yeah, you can have him doing his signature walking into the sunset sort of thing. So as far as this pistol goes, yeah, let's take a quick look at that. Yeah, so you could definitely get the trigger finger on there, and with this type of rifle, there's no handle grip to hold on to or whatever, so it looks like it's sculpted in a way so that this will fit neatly up against the shoulder. That is the hazard of me fumbling with this thing in real time. I never know exactly what I'm going to be showing you. Oh man, I can't tell you how nearly effortless it is to get this guy in his rifle firing pose. They got this figure set up in a way so you could pose him so it really looks like he's looking down the scope of his barrel. That's pretty damn cool. Yeah, this is a really good figure. Alright, so moving on to a quick figure rating. This is a rating system of 5 categories with up to 5 points each for a total of up to 25 points. So yeah, as far as this figure goes, he's got great details and paint applications. I don't think they quite hit the mark on the helmet sculpting, and it seems like they could have done just a little bit more to make the cape a little more interesting or whatever. It's just a straight up molded piece of plastic and nothing else. So as far as its articulation, it's great for an action figure. I wouldn't say there's anything at all missing as far as posability. You can definitely get what you need out of this figure. And as far as the plastic cape, I'll say it again. Not a huge fan of it. It looks nice, but I think it's going to work against you if you're trying to get this dude in certain poses. The quality of this figure is pretty darn good. This is basically a 6-year-old figure release, and there has been a lot of updates and improvements since then for sure. There are some very slight whiffs on paint applications. It's nothing that should deter you from buying this particular figure, I would say. And there again, I do have to point out that whatever shortcomings this figure has, this is a 6-year-old figure, and Hasbro has definitely made incremental improvements to their figure designs over time. So I would also say this figure is pretty accurate for his portrayal at this point in the series. He's got the banged up armor, he's got the janky mismatch paint, color scheme, etc. The only thing that was kind of questionable to me was the paint application on the helmet. I don't think they quite got that right, but other than that, I mean, it's really accurate to the TV show character. So ultimately, I'm giving the original Mandalorian a score of 17 out of 25. And at any rate, at the time Mandalorian came out, I would have been thrilled to get this figure. And to be frank, I'm pretty thrilled to have it right now. Even 7 years on, I think this is a great one to add to any Star Wars action figure collection. So, at any rate, that is my review of the original Mandalorian from the Mandalorian TV series. I've got a few more in the pipeline for this guy. One more that I bought real recently, and a couple others, one that has the dark blade or whatever you want to call it. Forget which one that one is. I'll be featuring those in reviews here eventually. But for now, this has been my review of The Mandalorian, number 94 of the Star Wars Black Series. And I'll have many more to come. More from the other content on my channel too. I'm also working on kind of a big sort of a crossover piece. It's taken a lot of time to edit this thing down. It's a bunch of figures from the Beast Box and Mega Box series. So that's going to be coming up here hopefully sooner than later. Thank you for taking the time to watch. If you've made it this far, please subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Leave a like, share this with a friend, comment, whatever, and we'll catch you in the next one. Thanks everybody. Have a good weekend.